I'm Jane Applegath. This is the Epic Vision Zone, where bold ideas meet extraordinary leaders. What if your anxiety, burnout, or physical symptoms weren't random, but energetic signals asking to be released? And what if the life you're trying to create is waiting on the other side of one energetic breakthrough? NATASHA Joy Price is first and foremost an energy healer. She is also an author and host of the Balm to the Soul podcast. For over 2 decades, Natasha has explored the unseen world of energy healing, consciousness, and the human field, guiding people to release emotional blocks, restore energetic flow, and reconnect to their true power. A Reiki Master with a background in parapsychology, Natasha blends science, spirituality, and lived experience to reveal how your energy fields shapes your physical, emotional, and spiritual reality. Working with the energy fields, she reveals how they can relate to our physical bodies and how we can clean and clear our energy field for optimum health, being it physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. Using modalities like Reiki, theta healing, energy management, past life regression, and soul continuum work, she helps people clear the what no longer serves them so that they can step into clarity, vitality, and aligned living. She has published 2 books. Her first is titled Freedom of the Soul, which is a proactive workbook designed to help readers find their own unique spiritual path. The second is her first novel, The Red Magus, an enthralling mystical adventure set across time and space where past and current lives converge. Both books are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Welcome, Natasha. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me on, Jane. It's lovely to meet you.
Well, likewise, and thank you for joining us all the way from Sussex, as we were saying earlier. So, yes, thank you. Well, I am so excited about this topic, as I was saying to Natasha before we got on here. And let's delve right in. What inspired you to get into the energy healing field?
Well, about 23 years ago, I was just had my third child, and I had terrible swollen ankles. He was born in the hottest week of the year. And somebody said to me, "Why don't you go and have a Reiki?" And that's the first time I'd even heard the word. Up until that point, I was a solicitor, a property lawyer, and I had 3 children, married with 3 children, and just had a very normal, if you like, life. But I did nothing spiritual. I didn't know about energy healing, hadn't got a clue. I went along with my son as well in his carry cot. I don't think I relaxed at all. I had my eyes shut, but I was thinking, what's she doing? You know, what's happening? I hadn't had any experience of that at all. But I had the most amazing experience happen to me in that session. And instead of making me frightened or scaring me, it just made me fascinated, absolutely fascinated. The walls of my little life, if you like, fell down. And I was like, well, how have I got to this age and not known that this existed? You know, what is this? Where's it come from? What's it made of? You know, all the questions that went through my mind. And that started my spiritual path, if you like. I then trained to be in Reiki 1, Reiki 2, and eventually my masters. And just through fascination, I started to study different modalities and what energy healing was all about, really.
That's interesting. So now I'm curious, during your session, was she able, besides the walls opening up and your curiosity being ignited, did your body feel better? Did she help with your swollen ankles? Did something shift physically for you as well?
Yes, something shifted for me. I felt as if my batteries had been recharged. And actually,
Mm.
all through the training, through the different layers of Reiki, obviously I worked and I had young children. And initially, I didn't really understand what was going on. I wasn't quite sure about this energy healing stuff. I didn't know whether I was doing it right, etc. But one thing I did know was that I always felt like my batteries had been recharged. So I kept thinking, well, I'm not sure what's happening, but I know something's happening. And that just propelled me to go back time and time again. And eventually I moved on with my experience and my training. So yes, I
Right.
felt a lot better.
Well, that leads us to our next question, actually. And thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting that your batteries were recharged. That's the energy, I think, possibly that was opening up because your careers in law and energy healing evolved alongside each other over time. Tell
Yeah.
us about that and what surprised you most about navigating both.
So I've been a lawyer for 29 years now, and got into Reiki 23 years ago. So you're right, they have been running parallel. I've often tried to merge them consciously, never worked. And for a long time I thought I don't really understand why I'm doing both. I saw the energy healing as my passion and the law was how I earned my living, basically. But I just couldn't quite seem to get them to merge at all. And then really came to the realization that energy healing kept me centered and balanced. A law career is very competitive. It's a very stressful environment. It's quite a difficult environment. Um,
Mm,
and I realized that actually the energy healing helped me. It kept me going because it just lessened the anxiety. It kept me centered and balanced. I learned different perspectives on life, and it aided my career, if you like.
mm.
But I've never
That's an
managed to
interesting,
merge them.
right. Well, it could be a very helpful thing, not just for possibly clients, but certainly your colleagues, seeing as
Mm.
that you could empathize with their needs in the sense that you're coming from where they are with the stress and the imbalance that they often experience. So I think you would have a whole lineup of customers if you were to put that little flag on your door. But needless to say, how do you think then that energy healing fits into our holistic health?
Before I answer that, I'll just say that now people are more interested in it, and there's a lot
Mm,
of mental health work uh, being used in law. But 20 years ago, no, it was
mm,
just, I hit a brick wall with it. But you're right, things have moved on. So for me, energy healing is part and parcel of our overall holistic health. I think it is. The physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the energetic, it's all part and parcel. And to me, it's this amazing piece of organic machinery, and it's all interlinked. So, just like any machinery, if a cog goes wrong in one area, nothing else flows as well. And that's exactly what energy healing is all about. But there is an
mm.
overlap. We deal a lot with emotions, negative emotions from traumatic events, etc. So there's an overlap, but it is, I think, often the missing piece of the jigsaw that is our holistic health. If you develop physical symptoms and you go to a traditional doctor, which I would absolutely advocate to do, Um, they talk about, how stressed you are. They might talk about your diet. They might talk about supplements. They might talk about therapists that can help you, or hypnotherapy these days they might refer you to. But nobody asks you or says what's going on in your energy, what's
Mm.
happening. So it's just missed off the list. Um, and I think it's incredibly important.
Oh, yes, you're absolutely right. That is such a profound question to ask. It's almost like they don't really delve into what's happening in your life either. So,
Mm,
because your
no.
life affects your energy, so okay, if you
Mm,
say your energy is low, okay, why is that? Because as we know, it's all a domino effect. We're a whole,
mm,
we're not just a piece. But yes, I love that. How does your energy feel? Yes, because people
mm,
nowadays, as you and I were talking at the beginning, we understand more about energy and we accept it more as, yes, it is part of our health. And whether we're up or down, stressed or happy, it certainly affects our energy. It's a
yeah,
frequency. We
yeah,
vibrate. I mean, I believe that we're broadcasting towers and we're constantly
yes,
vibrating a signal. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's
We all
going
have a
to affect.
very unique vibrational signature. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know. Does that play into when you meet a client? Do you ever feel their energy field? I'm just curious now.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yes. You
Mm.
can feel their energy. You can shift blocks out of their energy, stagnant energy. Yeah. I
Oh,
actually saw a chakra once during a treatment. And I I so freaked myself out that I'd seen this chakra, this thing that we talked about, um, that I've never seen one again in that way. But I
yeah.
saw it very, very clearly. And I think when I analysed it afterwards, it was extremely cold room. I was doing it in the client's home. She hadn't got the heating on, so it was really cold. I was cold. And then the bin men arrived and were making a noise outside. So I think my
Mm.
conscious mind was so taken up with those two things that it sort of moved out of the way, and I was able to actually see the chakra. Um,
Wow.
and it was fascinating, but I think part of me was slightly spooked. And so it's not a normal occurrence, or
Right.
it was just shown to me once so that it was an affirmation that, what we
Wow.
talk about is correct. Mm,
That's amazing. I've never heard anybody have experienced that before. But yeah, I could see
mm.
where that would freak you out. How did you know it was a chakra? I mean, I would be like, what is it?
Well, we'd been working on the chakras and having a
Mhm.
look, and it was absolutely. I saw it was the solar plexus chakra. It was bright yellow, and it had a
Mhm.
cord in it, which was even more interesting. So, and then the image faded, but I carried on doing. I think I was doing a crystal healing treatment on her, and use kyanite to cut cords. So I actually used the kyanite to cut the cords, and her stomach muscles just bounced up and down. And she said to me, "What are you
Wow.
doing? I can't control that." And I said, "Well, that's what I saw." And I did see it that time. So yeah, it
Wow.
was it was a massive, massive affirmation for me. And that's the
Wow.
thing, all along my career, every now and again, I've had this experience that's really been a big affirmation for me because I am science based, and you
Mhm.
tend to be much more logical and a bit cynical. I need proof to understand this. But dotted along my career, my energy healing career path, I've just had the odd affirmation that has really said to me, yes, you're on the right path.
Mm. That's wonderful. Yes, and you're in law, so that really is quite the, gives you that base, you say, for, not, it's not just woo woo as we were talking before, but you
Mm,
said you're science based, but also the fact that your background is in law. I mean, that's pretty
mm.
linear, so to speak. Well, thank you for
Yes.
sharing that. That is really amazing. And the fact that you could see the cord and then you knew to use the kyanite to cut it.
Mm,
Amazing. Wow. I think if
mm,
you seriously tapped into your gift, it will be something else. Yeah, there's something
mm.
there, for sure, Natasha. Well, you speak about energy blocks, as we were just talking here, with the chakras creating physical or emotional symptoms. So how can someone begin to recognize when their body is signaling an energetic imbalance?
Um, well, it's fascinating and it's quite interesting. So when you do a Reiki session, you will always say to the clients, you might feel like you're going to have, afterwards, you might feel quite ill. You might feel like you have flu-like symptoms. And it's a
Mm,
very strange feeling because you do feel like you've got flu, but there's no physical mucus or anything like that because it's not a physical issue that's going on, it's energetic. So that's a really good example of how you can actually have physical, feelings because of the movement of energy and the integration of energy. Um, I sometimes you have, you have you try other things and you have a physical issue and it's things are just not working, and then you can have a look at the energetic and the emotions behind it. I firmly believe that physical symptoms are your body's way of saying or getting your attention. Look, there's
hmm
something not quite right here on whatever level, whether that's emotion, and that will be energetic as well, but there's something that you need to have a look at here. And it will keep nagging you, if you like. I have an example because for a long time I've had hip pain, and I put it down to having three children. I've worked
hmm
on it for various reasons over the years. It was particularly bad about 10 years ago, and I, because of what I believe, I worked really hard to, well, what's going on? Why? What's happening behind there? Um, and I had a bit of a eureka moment in the shower, and I thought, I know what that's about. It just came to me, and it was about being bullied by somebody at work at that time. And so it was all the emotions about that, disappointment, anger, all of that. And I was able to clear it. And using theta healing, I completely cleared all of that. And again, that was a major affirmation for me because the pain disappeared, which was amazing. And then more recently, it came back again because this is the thing as well. If you have an issue, it can be layered
hmm
experiences. So you have to keep working at it sometimes. And I have with my hip. And then it came back more recently, and I was like, okay, what is going on now? So I ended up going to an intuitive healer because it's hard to work on yourself sometimes, and sometimes you need need different input. So I have a colleague, a
hmm
friend really, and she's an intuitive healer, and she worked on it, and she said she picked up on me holding shock in my hip from when I was about 2 or 3 years old. And I said to her, oh, I can't think of anything at the moment. She started talking about it, and I suddenly had a very vivid image of my mother coming back from a funeral, and it was a friend's child that had sadly passed away, and my mum was quite distraught. Now, for a 2 or 3 year old, that is shocking, and
Right.
I had clearly held on to that. I was amazed. I haven't even thought about that in 50 years. There's no way this person would know about it. I've never talked about it because it's just not been in my head. Um, and she was able to clear that. And then as I drove away, I thought, how does my hip feel? How does it feel? and the only word I could come up with was lighter. It felt lighter.
Mm,
But since that day, I've had no pain whatsoever at all.
mm.
So when you have an experience like that where you've got pain and then you have no pain, that again, that's a massive affirmation that something is happening.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That is, most people wouldn't think to, because of your background, most people wouldn't think, like you said, to go to an intuitive healer, or like you discovered the first one by yourself by, looking back and saying, why do I have this pain? And I guess for everyone, it's different. For some reason, you keep it in your hip, but I'm assuming that,
Yeah,
others can keep it elsewhere in their body, depending on,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, absolutely. I think it was in my hip because after three children, that's actually quite a weak area. And I don't
Hmm.
know if that is, other people agree with that, other energy healers, but I think if you have a particularly, you've had an injury somewhere, or, you've had um, a weakness somewhere, then those sort of emotions and those negative emotions seem to be stored. Or you could
Hmm.
say you have a weakness because you've got you've got things stored there. So I don't know
Yeah.
which way round that works. But I've always thought it was my hips because of three kids. That's the only thing I
Right,
put down
right.
to it. Mm.
Well, fascinating. I love the stories. That really, makes people pause and look at things differently. And I love the fact that you shared that with us, because, as you said, you yourself didn't realize until, you either discovered it yourself or you went to the intuitive healer. So it just proved
Mm.
positive that, there is things that we don't know yet, but we're certainly
Mm.
starting to learn more about it. And thank
Mm.
goodness for that. Thank you. So, what's one belief then, or emotion, Natasha, emotional pattern that you see most often that keeps people stuck, and how do you help them release it?
I think for me, I think the most common emotion is self-worth and value.
Mm,
I think that comes up time and time again. I mean, it's something that I've struggled with as well, at various times. So it's up there, with being the most common emotion. And what we do, so for a lot of our energy healing, uh, the majority of energy healing modalities are the same. You look for the negative emotions, and then there's always a way that it's removed, if you like.
mm,
So in theta, what we do is we dig. We call it digging, but we try and find the root experience where that came from. So that might be in childhood. That might even be back in the womb, because of
mm,
course the baby will take on board the mother's feelings, whatever the experience of the mother at that time. So my mother, when I she was pregnant with me, had lost her brother, so she was grieving. So for a
mm,
long time, when I was much younger, I would have waves of grief come over me and not know what that was about, because I
mm,
hadn't had that experience in my life. Um, so the baby can take on things in the womb. So we will go back, we will look at things. I use compassion key sessions as well. Normally, if we find something before the age of 5, that's often quite strong, those very early emotions. But you can go back into past lives as well. And like I say, it can be layered as well. So
mm.
we can
Yes.
clear stuff from this lifetime, but we were holding on to that because of previous past lives as well. So it's a bit like an onion. You remove one layer and then you find something else underneath, and you remove that and you find something else underneath. So it's not a quick fix at all. It is an ongoing process. It's an ongoing way to deal with issues and to work through through things. But there's so many modalities that are out there, thank goodness, and they all work in a very similar way, but they're all incredibly effective.
Yes, I could see where the different areas would be applicable, depending on the
Yeah.
work that you're doing. And speaking of that, you also are trained in parapsychology. So, briefly describe that for our audience and how you bridge science and spirituality in a way that people are more receptive to it.
Yeah, so parapsychology is the study of paranormal phenomena. So I did a master's in it, and it was absolutely fascinating. And we would do things like near-death experience, telepathy, clairvoyance, um, alien abduction was another um, module that we did. It's really anything that's outside of our five main senses. And the part what we were doing in the masters was taking these metaphysical events and trying to fit them into science parameters. Because in
Mm,
science, unless they fit within certain parameters, then science don't recognize them.
right.
So I found that actually quite frustrating because I kept thinking, well, we know they happen, so maybe science have to change their parameters, but that wasn't quite the point of the thing. But anyway, um, because we all know that we have thoughts, but they are energetic, but actually science struggles to prove that. But we all know it
Mm,
exists. So to
right.
me, I felt like maybe the parameters needed to be changed slightly. But it was all very fascinating. Um, yeah, I think bridging science and spirituality, I think um, it's becoming much more, um, that they're becoming much more overlap, if you like.
Right.
Um, maybe changing the way our vocabulary and changing the way we talk about things. Because a lot of science has proven how amazing our brains are and how amazing our abilities are. And what seemed like absolute magic is actually science based. And I think we are,
Mhm.
discovering that more and more. But maybe like talking in terms of the extended mind. So we're talking about consciousness beyond the brain, if you like. And there's been lots of studies about actually our consciousness being in our energy field, that the brain
Yes.
being the physical, mechanical bit, but actually our consciousness, our ability to know that we exist, actually is sitting in our energy field. So there's been that sort of study, which is amazing. And then more and more, there's transpersonal psychology, which has an overlap. So it's like meditation, it's like prayer, and there's lots of studies about the power of prayer. People praying and situations changing. Um, and all that is covered under the umbrella of transpersonal psychology is obviously we accept as being better for our physical and mental health. So real reason why people need to start looking at this, and becoming aware of it. And of course, then we have quantum physics, which
Mm.
is, you know, mind blowing.
Yeah.
And some of the things that they work out and talk about, you do think, well, that's ridiculous, or that sort of defies what we all believe. But that is science, and they are proving that. So I think, there's a lot of connection between um, science and spirituality, absolutely, and energy healing as well. Yesterday, I read about um, a new study using an energy healer. They asked him to send energy to cancer cells, and they
Mm.
are discovering that it does actually affect cancer cells. So they can see the cells actually change in response to the healing, which is amazing.
Right.
So there's lots of studies, there's lots of connections beginning to be made. And I think we've gone way past woo-woo now.
Oh yeah. I agree 100%. Because, there are instances of people who have completely healed themselves with the power of their mind. Because our minds are much more powerful than we know. And there are practices now, like you just mentioned, the power of prayer. That's a really deep seated belief. So they're doing the work on a science level that Dr. Joe, I believe, is doing. Because once
Mm,
you have that deep seated belief, however you get there, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, or through a sound healing or a combination of all above, you can you can do amazing things for your body, amazing, way beyond what
yeah,
most people would think possible. And in
yeah.
in religious sense, they would call it a miracle. But now we're
Mm,
proving, like you said, that energy can affect our cells. It actually, I
mm,
think it was Dr. Lipton who noticed it years and years ago. um, and it was something that he discovered was our thoughts that affect the cells in humans, because he did experiments first on animals or plants, but then he figured out that it was our human thought, and which is an energy signal again.
mm,
So
mm,
yeah,
mm.
I'm with you, Natasha. I find the whole thing fascinating, and I love to learn more about it, because it really is
Yeah.
something, like you said, the quantum physics takes us to a whole nother realm. And that's a whole nother
Yes.
discussion. But it is
I know.
fascinating. I always say to my
Yes,
husband, okay, there's another reality. So how does that happen? How do we get there? It's like
I know.
I'm living somewhere, I'm living on another plane, and it's all happening at the same time. So it's, yeah, that's Star Wars, but it's really not.
Yes.
It's amazing. Yeah. I know
But
you and I.
quantum physics shows how they have proven in quantum physics how distant healing
Yes.
works. So I used to have a client in India and I would send him healing and he loved it. But that quantum physics has now proven that that is a possibility. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, energy does travel through, you don't have to be there. It does travel through
no.
space and time. Yes, I know that.
Mm,
You can have an energy
mm,
healer, well, like you said, in a different country, but
mm,
it works. Yes, absolutely.
yes.
Well, for someone new to this work, then, Natasha, what's the first step to clearing their energy field and creating more flow in their life?
I think, first of all, they need to acknowledge and understand that they have an energy field. And
Mm,
for my students, if I'm teaching Reiki or whatever, I describe it like the snow globes. You know,
mm,
the toy where you have the snow, they shake it up and you get. So um, it's just a good analogy for them to see. So the snow globe and they're inside. So once they've got that concept, um, they can start connecting using their intuition because and their intention, because the intention is um, like flicking a switch to start the energy flowing. So intention is incredibly important. So
mm,
anybody new to it, set their intention to connect to their energy and start to feel their energy in a different way, so that that bubble around us, their aura perhaps, um,
mm,
and then go for an energy healing, have a Reiki session with somebody. And often people who have never been before will say, well, I can feel heat in certain areas, I feel cold in other areas, or I can see colors, I can see
mm,
flowing colors. That's a common one. And for me, when I see a healthy aura, I see beautiful, bright, flowing colours. So I'm assuming that they pick up on that. Um, or they actually feel vibration. They feel the energy
Mm,
vibrating through them. And then, that starts people thinking, well, I don't know what's going on here, a bit like I said earlier, but I know there's something happening, sort of thing. So it's good to get that affirmation. But if people have perhaps had an experience that has um, a trauma, if you like, a really great way is to journal, to just
mm,
write out everything that happened, all the emotions, etc. And just by making connections, you can start the healing.
right.
You can start releasing. And the thing when you release emotions, what's important, old stuff can come up. So you can think, why
Mhm.
am I feeling like that again? And the important thing is to just see it as literally floating away, not engage in it again, not in re-traumatizing yourself in a way, but don't engage in it again. Just let it flow away,
Right.
basically. But all of those things, or something else that they've read about, try meditation or flowing meditation, or I went for a forest bathing session the other day, which is becoming more common, which is supposed to be incredibly good for you. So something like that. There's so much going on now. There's so many
Right.
people out there doing different things. It's just about having those experiences. Um, and I think there's not one way to start, but people can find lots to do.
Right. Yeah. Sort of like dip your toe
Yeah,
in the bucket, whether whatever it is that makes you feel comfortable to start with. Even sound healing is now becoming a big thing because of the vibration
yes,
of sound. And there's
yes,
there's many things that they're now incorporating with that as well. So your advice is to just try something and see what
yes,
happens. Be open-minded when you go.
yeah,
Just let it
yeah,
flow, because I know if you're a
yeah.
skeptical and you just go there, and well, funny enough, when you went, you were kind of, skeptical and very rigid, and you didn't know what was happening,
Mm,
but you had a very curious mind. So that opened up the
mm,
doors for you. Yeah. Or maybe it
mm,
was because she was moving the energy. It could have been both. But yes,
yes.
absolutely. Give it a try, because, you never know what's going to happen. Well, on a
Mm.
personal level now, how has this work transformed you? I know you mentioned that it helps you be more grounded in your work, especially through your career. And was there something specific that you had to let go of while you were making this personal transformation?
When I first started Reiki, I could not stand anybody being near my throat at all.
Mm,
And I would have a treatment and it would throb. It would just be so uncomfortable. And I just didn't like it. And as a child, I was incredibly shy, painfully
mhm,
shy. Um, And I think that was a connection. I had to do a lot of work around my throat chakra, about communicating, about setting my boundaries, about speaking my truth. They're all lessons,
mhm,
that I've had to learn. And then when I got to 50, I was about to start my past life regression therapy training, and I had imagery come up that I didn't really understand. And I discovered that something had happened to me when I was 5.
mm,
Basically, I'd been assaulted when I was 5, and I had no memory of it until I was 50. And my subconscious had hidden that from me. And I
mhm,
remember really actually being in shock that, one, I couldn't even remember this,
right.
and that it had suddenly come up at this time just before I started in an immensely healing process. And I think that really affected my how I felt about my self-worth, like we talked about before, how I felt, my value, probably to do with the throat issue that was going on. Um, so yeah, I think and I continue to clear layers. It's just become a way of life now. Every day I check in with my energy and I'm constantly removing things. And I
Mm,
still have breakthroughs and still make
right.
connections and think, oh gosh, where's that come from? And I think it is a way of life, basically. And you
Mhm.
never, if you hear somebody say, I've done all my healing,
Mm.
no, that's a massive red flag for me. I don't think we ever do all our healing at all.
Right.
But yes, I think it's massively changed me. It's really, I also was very anxious when I was younger in my 20s, which I think a lot of the younger generation are even worse.
Mhm.
There's a lot of anxiety and fear there, and this was a way that I found that I could manage that I could really keep centered and balanced and keep those levels of fear and anxiety to a functioning level, basically.
Right. It's almost like the young
Mm.
people, all of them need this therapy. All of them.
Mm. Mm.
I mean,
Mm.
it just shocks me that someone in their 20s feels anxious. I didn't even know any of those
Yeah.
words or feel. I mean, I might have felt anxious, but I would have said nervous at some, maybe taking an exam or moving into another, office job. But today, the kids are like just on the edge all the time. And I feel
Mm.
so bad for them.
Mm.
I'm like, you're so young. You
Mm.
should be excited. I mean, I
Mm.
remember
Mm.
it was a great time. I would go dancing to the discotheques on the weekend. I was just, having a great time being in your
Having
20s. But
fun.
now,
Mm.
pardon? Yeah, having
Having
fun.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's how it should be, but
Mm.
yeah, it would be very helpful because I know there's a lot of disruption these days and it's been a lot. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And it continues to be so, but that's the world we're in, so we have to
Yeah.
learn to adapt. But
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, tell me then on a personal level, what is your favorite therapy, Natasha, and why?
I think for me, it is the past life regression. I find past life regression fascinating. I was
Yeah.
very frightened the first time. I had the same fears that most people have. I thought I was going to get stuck or I was going to get
Right.
lost, and I just couldn't quite work out how this was going to work. Um, but I've done so many now, and it's just everyone is different, and the clearing and the sort of lightness that you feel afterwards is amazing. And you learn so much about yourself, all of these connections, and why is that happening, and what am I here doing, basically. Um, so yeah, I find past life regression and that sort of work, the future life progression, the soul continuum work, all of that, I find that just fascinating.
So likewise, I would be, yeah, a past life regression. You always fear that, where's that going to take me? And will I get stuck
Mm,
there? Do they put you in a
mm.
meditative state? I'm just curious. How does that happen?
Yeah, they call it trance, and I always have a bit of an issue with
Mm,
that word because I think people
yeah.
think I have no control, I don't know what's happening, that they can make me be a chicken, like the stage and those were the worries I had as well. But all it really means is a very deep meditative state, and the
Mm,
more relaxed you can be, the better it is. You
right.
can block it if you're frightened, so usually people get to know me, they get used to my voice. The more relaxed they can get, the more they will see.
Right.
And then it becomes incredibly informative.
I'm curious now. This is me asking because you say past life regressions. Does
Mm.
it ever take you back to before? Like some people believe our souls come back. and we're,
Oh, yes.
for lack of a better word, recycled.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Past life regression is, looking at the different lifetimes that you had, the different lifetimes that you incarnated. So
Mm.
you can be male or female, you can be in all sorts of scenarios. I've done so many because of my training, but what I found was you often have what I call threads. So you have
Mm.
similar skills. So I'm an energy healer in this lifetime, but I have another life where I was a shaman. I had another life where I was a herb lady, a herbalist in Scotland. I also have a life in France, a young girl who could see people leave their bodies on death. She could see that. And because of the church at that time, she was basically murdered and hung
Mm.
because, that at that time
Oh.
that just wasn't acceptable. So I have all these lifetimes that perhaps people had psychic abilities or healing abilities. And to be able to see those and make that connection and see that thread is just
Mm.
fascinating, and it gives you purpose for this lifetime as well.
Yeah, I could see that. Now I could see where your novel makes. I mean, I could see books out of all of that. Just amazing. Yeah, very much like the
Yeah.
that series that was televised. Gosh, it was huge. It was a novel series, and she went through the British Stonehenge, and she went back in time. And anyway, it was just amazing. But yes, I could see that. That's why I was curious, that it's not just
Mhm.
your life here now, but it's back
No.
further as to when your soul, has been come back to experience other things, or maybe a soul correction. So yes, well,
Yes.
I could see where that
Yeah,
could get
exactly.
really fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
we're talking about past life regressions. So now, how about what is a future life progression and soul continuum work? Tell us about that.
So, what I've discovered is that time is not linear. We make time linear to
Mm.
understand it. So, for me, your soul path is like a cobweb, hanging across the universe, if you like, across time and space. So, when we do sessions, we follow the energy basically, but you can go into past lives, but you can also go into future lives. You can move around that cobweb, if you like, and you can go into the future of this lifetime, or you can go into future lives. There's a difference, if you see what I mean. So
Hmm.
the soul continuum work is basically looking at all of that as a whole, not just a
Hmm.
line past to present, and just on um, working on your soul's path, and getting information from that. What lessons are you learning? Are there threads in the soul continuum? And then, of course, there's a lot of people that talk about galactic lives as
Mm.
well. So you can start sort of making a 3D cobweb, if you like, across, and start exploring more. But I have done regressions where we went to the first time that you incarnated ever,
Mm.
and that client was like a dandelion seed just floating through the air. Very strange, unusual. I've had other clients that have gone and felt like they were a sound wave just flowing
Oh,
through the universe.
wow.
So it's fascinating. It's very interesting. I have had a session as well where I literally saw, it was almost like my subconscious was shuffling files, and it was sort of like, which one are we going to choose? But it literally,
Oh,
that was the image that I could see. So you
wow.
really can, the there's no limit to what you can go and explore, basically.
And that again, they put you in a meditative state, or like you said, a
Yes,
trance for, ah,
a
okay.
trance. Yeah,
Wow. Of course, the naysayers would say, well, how do you know it's not someone's imagination, just making it up? Because that's
sure.
the other side of the
Yeah.
coin. Yeah. It
Or
almost,
how do you know you haven't seen a film or read a book that you've forgotten about that's in your.
right.
But I tell you why, how you tell, it's the emotions. It's a level of
Mm,
emotion. I've had people sob through the whole session and
mm,
then be so shocked and say to me, I haven't cried for years. I have no idea where that came from, you know. So it's the emotion, one of the things. And the other thing is, once you've experienced it, the memories and the visuals that you saw become like your memories and you never forget it. And that's quite strange. I have not got the best memory in the world, um, but I can recall, I think, pretty much every past life regression that I've had because it just stays. It's almost like you've refreshed it.
mhm.
You've remembered it, and now you can't let it go. So it just feels, but that is a moot point. But I believe it's past lives. Um, and I think even if it's your subconscious explaining a situation to you, that's pretty cool in itself anyway. But
Yeah, no, you've opened the box, so to speak. The Pandora's box. And in a way, it almost sounds a bit like quantum physics when you're talking about experiencing the future, and you can
mm,
take yourself to the future or even your other lives to the future. I mean, there's science now, and yeah, that's what's the first thing that clicked into my mind. I was thinking about, wow, that sounds a lot like quantum physics, where
yeah,
they believe everything is happening on the same plane at the same time.
yes,
But
yes,
yeah, boy, I tell you, you just get lost in those trances, and it's it's amazing work. Well, this is
Mm,
really interesting. Well, thank you so much for all of that information. So tell us, Natasha, about your two books because they are very different.
yes. So, Freedom of the Soul was written as a proactive workbook, and it was inspired by my middle daughter,
Mm,
and she had a group of friends, and they all had some sort of issue, mental health issue,
mm,
and it was quite frightening. I just thought, oh my goodness, they're so young. It's just,
yeah.
it's just frightened me. And one of them came round to tea, and for some reason we got talking about Reiki, and she became really animated and fascinated about what I was saying. And I thought, actually, I'm going to write something that will give them extra tools to help with that anxiety and to find their own unique path,
Mm,
because they'll try different things and different things will resonate with different readers. But if they go off on a tangent and find something to be passionate about, then that's fabulous. So that's where Freedom of the Soul came about. And then The Red Magus is my first novel, and it's all set around past life regression. So it's set in the present day. A young mum just had a baby, feeling out of sorts. She goes to have a regression session with somebody that she sort of vaguely knows but trusts. Um, and she sees something in a past life and she begins to think that it's playing out again in her current life. So it's a bit of a thriller.
mm,
And then she also meets a character called the Red Magus. So magi were sort of sorcerers or priestesses or
mm,
probably healers. They were the midwives of the tribe. They were also the soul midwives as well. That sort of character. So yes, I just sort of I weaved in all sorts of spiritual themes in there. I had a lot of fun just putting in crystals and essential oils and sound healing and, vibrational aspects and
Mm,
meditation. And I just weaved it all into the story. And I felt like I wanted it to sort of teach people, but it be an enjoyable story as well. So
mm,
there's so many layers to it. Some people might say it's just fiction. That's fine. Other people might take more from it
right.
on different layers.
Yes, people who know, I've got to get a
Yeah,
copy myself because that's fascinating. I love to weave facts with fiction because we learn through
yeah,
story. And being able to
absolutely.
weave that story, just as you have with several of the questions that I've had today, you've woven a story into it. And that is what
Mm,
stays with people is those stories.
mm,
And
mm.
yes, yeah, I think that's you're right. There will be a lot of people who get that. And I'm not sure if it's applicable for every age group, but it would be great for the young, like the 20-year-olds or whatever. Like you spoke about that
Yeah,
young girl. I don't know how old she is now, but when you weave that into a story, it could be something that just, all of that, all those modalities start to click because you're
yeah,
playing into them through the story. Absolutely. And
yes.
just a question then, your first book, is that also applicable for every age? I know you mentioned that you wrote it with your young daughter's friends in mind, but is that also applicable for adults?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
It's different ideas, concepts, stories, and then at the end of each chapter, it's an exercise and go away and do something. I think anybody of any age can start, you know, it start what's the word? Investigating. Um, yeah.
Okay.
And being cynical. It's great to be cynical. I'm cynical about new things sometimes, but you need to go away and get your own affirmations. You've got
Right.
to experience it really. So yes, for all age groups.
Okay, wonderful. Well, tell us one emotion, Natasha, that instantly elevates your frequency.
I think for me, it is fascination in something or passion in something.
Mm,
I think it's so important, especially for the new generation, the younger generation. I keep telling my son this that you have to find something that you're passionate about, and that really, really makes your soul sing, if you like, and
right.
it just propels you. And it doesn't matter how busy you are or you are just fascinated by something, you have new energy. So for
Yes.
me, I think the Japanese call it your ikigai, something that you are
Ikigai.
passionate about. And it can be baking cookies, it can be growing a particular plant, it can be anything. It's not about making money out of that. It's just you being fascinated in the process
Mm,
and having passion about it. And I think that vibration is extraordinary. Mm.
mm. I agree 100%. I love that. That's not something I would have thought of, but like yourself, I am fascinated by this topic, these topics that we
Mm.
have discussed, and I am fascinated by what is possible. Just, because we're living in an age
Yeah,
now where everything is possible if you believe and if you
yeah.
understand. It's always that understanding that what is possible. So thank you for that. Well, what would you say is the biggest myth about our energy healing?
I think that one that you know, like past life regression, you can get stuck or you can get lost or it can
Mm,
be very negative. I've never found that. I also think some people feel that, have termed it, perhaps it's not a good thing for us to explore these things, that
mm,
perhaps it can be evil, if we invite in energies from outside, but I've
mm,
never ever found that to be the case.
right.
I've with all of the modalities that I've done, some. I've enjoyed less, but nothing has been, bad. Or I actually don't like terming energy negative and positive anyway. I feel like it's just energy. It just is what it is.
Right.
Um, but I've not ever really had a bad experience that's even the first experience that set me off. I mean, that could have been scary because it was
Right.
such an unusual experience, but I didn't take it that way. I took it with fascination and I want to understand this. But I do think some people term it that it's probably not a good thing to dabble in.
Right.
But I think they can be mixing things up there.
Yes, I agree. I think it's the fear. We fear the
Yeah.
unknown, and that's just our reptilian brain because it's not something that we are familiar with, and the reptilian is trying to keep us safe.
Mm.
But we learn through curiosity. We create through curiosity. Um, and so, yeah, and if you go in there with that energy or that feeling of fear, it's so deep rooted, then you're going to most likely have a bad experience because
Exactly.
you can't let go. And probably I would suggest don't do it, because
Yeah.
yeah, they're those are the ones that'll come out screaming and saying it was horrible.
Mm.
you know but that's
Mm.
because they went in with it, so you manifest it. That's exactly what
Yeah.
happens is you manifest it. It's just like you can manifest
Yeah.
good and you can manifest bad. I have to tell you a story about manifesting. My dad, I'll never forget this, and I didn't know manifestation back then. I did, this is back in my teens. Nobody ever heard of any of this stuff. And so my sister was cutting up these little cherry red tomatoes at a breakfast, and my dad had a white clean business shirt on, and he was like, "Oh, daughter, you better be careful with cutting those up because it's going to pop, and when it does, it's going to squirt all over my shirt and ruin it." And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And I never realized it at the time, but I said he manifested that because there were other people at the table, but he put out the call for that to happen. I mean, what are the chances of
Yeah.
it happening other than he said that it was going to happen? Whether or not he
Yeah.
he didn't know any of this stuff. He was a strong manifester. So
Yeah.
if only he had used it for positive. I mean, in that case, because he'd always see the negative and not the positive. And he said, "This is going to happen," and
Yeah.
sure enough, it would happen. But anyway, that's just a fun story. I've never forgotten that because I said, "Oh, I get it now." He manifested that. So anyway, it didn't end well. It was a bad. He had to go change the shirt and everything. So talking about your podcast now, Natasha, you also have that. And what is it about? And tell us, why do you think the podcast, what about it is valuable? Because I know that it is pretty popular.
Yeah, Balm to the Soul. It's been going for about 5 years now.
Hmm.
And it's all about energy healing and spirituality. I've had lots of coaches and therapists and channelers and
Hmm.
authors on there. You know, I think I love doing the podcast. I love having, who doesn't love having a bit of a
Yeah.
chat about things with people, fascinating people as well, who are all passionate about their own topic. But I think it's incredibly informative. Um, it's convenient for people, isn't it? Because they
Yes.
listen to podcasts during dead time, if you like. I often listen when I'm driving. You can do it while you're doing something else.
Mhm.
You can do it in convenient times for you and in short periods. It doesn't have to take up a lot of time. I think we all love listening to people having a chat because it's a human connection, isn't it? Um,
Mhm.
and I think it's good for people's mental well-being, um, as well. And I think actually, if somebody's not got anybody to talk to, it's nice to be able to just tune into all these people having all these conversations.
Right.
Um, so I think podcasts are amazing, and they are becoming so popular, aren't they? That I mean, there's so many. I think there's about 4 million podcasts now, aren't there? So,
Yeah.
there's so much to choose from.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're great.
Well, that's wonderful. I also too love that you learned something from it. That you
Yes.
can always pick up some
Mm,
information, whatever it is that your interest is. You can always get some tidbit of information that you didn't have before, or it sparks a curiosity that you didn't have
mm,
before. So that's wonderful.
mm.
And like you, I love them as well, obviously. It's something I'm passionate about, and I love learning and speaking to people. So tell us then, Natasha, what future projects are you working on now?
Well, I am about to retire from the law after
Oh.
29 years. So I am going to pivot and spend 100% of my time on my spiritual business, which is dandelion therapies. So that's one to one with the therapies that I love. Also doing the podcast, and also doing some more writing. So I'm doing at
Mm,
the moment some short stories, spiritually based short stories. And I'm also working with a group of other writers to do a chapter in a compilation book. And
mm,
it's all going to be about sacred space, women
mm.
needing their own space, and why what that's about, basically. So yeah, I'm it's a bit of a change. Well, it's a huge change actually. It's the end of a 29-year chapter. But I can't wait. I can really put 100% of my energy into my passion, if you like. So
Yeah.
um so yeah, that's going to be my future few months.
I am so happy for you. I'm just you're gonna bloom. I mean, it's just yeah, it's time to let go of the law. And I used to be in the
Mm,
financial industry, and I let go of it years ago. So I
yeah.
understand, where you're coming from. So I don't think you'll know yourself a year from now. Oh my gosh, you just have so much information. We'll have to reconnect so you can fill us
Yes.
in as to what's happening. Absolutely. And all
Yeah.
those novels that you're going to pump out. So thank you for that. Very exciting. Well, if there was one message that you could share with the world, what would it be?
I have for years had this sort of uh, phrase in my head, and I have it on my website as well, and I have no idea where it's come from, but it's Compassion Crusader.
Mm,
And I think if people can do anything, then they need to be kind and compassionate. And I think we would be in a very different place if that were the case.
mm. Yes, I love that. Compassion Crusader. That's a movement for sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I
yeah,
love it. It has a
yeah,
resonance to it. It does. It has a vibration
yeah,
to it.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. So tell our audience then, Natasha, how best to connect with you and to purchase your books.
So my books are on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. But if people go on my website, Dandelion Therapies, they can connect to me through that way.
Okay, wonderful. And we'll have all that information as well on our Epic Vision Zone bio pages. And because we're
Mm.
here on the Epic Vision Zone, I have one last question. If your life were an epic story, what would the title be?
Well, this I had to think about this one. But I think it would be something like she traveled across time and space.
Mm. Oh, that's perfect. Yes.
Mm.
That sounds like a book I would open, because I see
Yeah.
I would be curious of how that happens. But thank you for that. Yes, it's a question I ask everyone. So it really makes them think. So I love that.
Yeah.
I love to put people in that imagination. Thank you again, Natasha, for reminding us that we are not stuck, and what can be blocked can be cleared. And once again, for information and to connect with Natasha, go to the Epic Vision Zone bio pages, where you will find all of her direct contact information. And If this conversation awakened something within you, share it. Subscribe to the Epic Vision Zone podcast and step deeper into this evolution. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Jane Applegath. Look me up at janeapplegath.com, and sending you so much love and gratitude. Until next time, stay visionary, lead with love, stay epic.